welcome to another edition of the Full Force News Burst, brought to you by GeneralsJoes.com, with me as your host, Chris Spinoff, you absolute McLeod, aka Time Master Katie. On this instalment of your absolutely favourite kind of burst, I'm joined by multimedia mogul, author and show sponsor Justin Generals Blows Bell to discuss the shocking report that a Snake Eyes spin-off movie is in development. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this news burst. So, in true G.I. Joe fashion, yet another report from the Hasbro/Paramount camp has been revealed, this time discussing the possibility of a Snake Eyes movie spin-off. The Hollywood Reporter broke the exclusive news earlier today, and it's creating a bit of a buzz. Not a Buzz Dixon. Evan Spiliotopoulos.
Thank God that you're saying that name, not me.
Thank you. Famous for Beauty and the Beast and The Huntsman Winter's War, is in talks to write the script for the film, and Hasbro's CEO Brian Goldner has been attached as a producer. There's been a lot of discussion about whether they will look into the Arashikage origin story in more detail that was shown in Rise of Cobra briefly, or instead possibly use this as an opportunity to attempt the Dawn Moreno storyline.
It's going to be 2 hours of those two kids from Rise of Cobra just fighting each other.
Could you imagine? Whatever the decision, we imagine a lot of this will depend on the success of the third live-action G.I. Joe movie slated for a 2020 release. Justin, let's start with the reveal itself. Is this a touch premature at this stage to be talking spin-offs and so on before we've even had the initial rotation?
I feel like it kind of is, yeah. I mean, I guess it depends what their focus is. If it's clearly on Snake Eyes as kind of being the touchstone of this whole movie franchise, then maybe not. It could be kind of similar to what they're doing with Deadpool, where they had Deadpool 1 and then Deadpool 2 is kind of spinning into this X-Force sort of thing. Yeah. But honestly, I don't think Snake Eyes is quite on the level of Deadpool.
So you think it's going to be the Snake Eyes movie first, followed by Snake Eyes 2, featuring G.I. Joe, like they used to do in the comics, yeah.
Yeah, God, no, I hope not. And it's funny too, because you can't get much opposite characters really when you compare Deadpool and Snake Eyes. You got the guy who's called literally the Merc with the mouth, who never stops talking, and then you've got this other guy who just never says anything. So
it's funny, they're very similar and very different in the exact. Yes. It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, what direction do you think they're going to go in anyway? What are your initial thoughts seeing this story?
Honestly, I mean, it almost has to be some kind of flashback or origin story kind of thing, which is weird because it would eschew any of the familiar Snake Eyes visible traits. But these days, with Avengers Infinity War just coming out, it's clear that they don't want these huge name actors in a film with their face covered for 2 hours.
Yeah. Actually, we did see that with Avengers, didn't we? Everyone seemed to be unmasked, probably 70% of the time, yeah. Yeah,
so I mean, if they're using a popular actor to kind of drive the Snake Eyes character, they're not going to throw a black mask on him for 2 hours and let him run around, and not talk. Yeah. I mean, so it almost has to be some kind of origin story where there's actually some conversation, some relationships, and some views of what the actor actually looks like. But, on the flip side, if they do that, then it kind of stops being a Snake Eyes film as everybody recognizes Snake Eyes, and instead becomes this is a soldier who, becomes something different at the end of the movie. And you get to the same problem that the G.I. Joe films have kind of had going forward, where they keep on trying to reinvent an origin story, and you don't get the development. You don't get the development to the end of the movie and to prepare you for the sequel, and then the sequel goes back to the beginning again, and you still don't get the payoff sort of. Yeah. So I mean, we have had a Snake Eyes payoff in the first two movies. There's been a pretty decent rendition of Snake Eyes. He's been one of the few saving graces of both films. Yeah. I could see them taking this opportunity to kind of go back in the past and see what makes them tick.
What would you ideally like to see them do with this film? And also kind of connected to that, I kind of want to also bring up the whole Dawn Moreno situation as well. Now, I was having a talk with my wife, Kate, earlier today, and she was saying that she would love to see, a Dawn Moreno-based Snake Eyes movie. And I think when the comic came out way back, like a couple of months ago, when the comic came out, the Dawn Moreno storyline, there was a report straight away that came up that we reposted that was saying, does Dawn Moreno deserve a movie? And it was like, wow, we haven't even had the arc completed, and there's already talk of, there was such a buzz around the female Snake Eyes, and it seemed to be a positive buzz, even in the camp that usually kind of against that sort of thing. Now, with that in mind, what would you like to see them do with this?
I'd like to see them kind of do a mixed thing where, you kind of mess with the timeline. Maybe he's on a particular mission or operation or something, and you see flashbacks, but there's got to be some current stuff going on too. I think they kind of have to interweave them. And obviously, he's not going to be a Vietnam vet, but they could, whether they use the Middle East, the Middle East conflict or something like that to kind of build that around. And obviously,
wasn't it? Was it Kristan that they used in?
Exactly.
Yeah. The fake Middle East country.
I think they just had Ecclestein just like hack a couple syllables and put
Kristan. Yeah.
But yeah, they'd have to, it'd be kind of different because obviously the whole, ninja themes aren't quite so prevalent now as they were in the 80s. Everybody was a ninja. It was no big deal.
Yeah.
Now they have to kind of figure out how to make that work. But I think that's what they would have to do is kind of, you see Snake Eyes running some kind of current operation that's connected to an event in his past. Maybe we see him but then you get back to the point of, is it a reboot or a continuation? Because you would kind of have to see his first conflict with Storm Shadow, you would think, in some kind of focus movie on him, but he's already met Storm Shadow a couple times in the existing films. So what is this really?
Yeah.
It's going back to the well again, or is this an actual continuation?
That's what I don't like about the soft reboot idea.
Yeah.
That really bugs me because it's like it's either a reboot or it's not a reboot. Like they can't exist in the same space if they're contradicting each other, and that really is something I have a problem with Rise of Cobra and Retaliation, because that was really seen as a soft reboot.
Right.
Now, the kind of idea, again, like something that Kate brought up, is that she could probably, she could see them doing like, in the same kind of flashback scenario. Dawn is the focal point in the future, and the flashbacks are the male original Snake Eyes, and then you find at some point during that story how the two crossed over. Like, she doesn't know why these thoughts are in her head, and I actually thought that was a really, really cool way.
That is a pretty cool way
of doing it. And also kind of covers both bases. You kind of, you get to, and because I was concerned, and I did mention this in our little conversation, I said that I've got this kind of concern that if they did do Dawn Moreno, I feel like they wouldn't be able to do it in the way it's been done in the comics. Not so much that it's like ridiculous and just kind of crazy ideas behind it with the brainwave scanner and stuff. Because I mean, we've had weirder stuff in the G.I. Joe movies.
Sure.
I mean, Cobra La, but and I love that, by the way. But I think that like that, it would be difficult to translate the storyline as is to the screen. But I think it could be done in that kind of idea that Kate had, where it would be her thought, like her in the future, but then the flashbacks, and then all of a sudden it all ties up as to what's happening. So people that aren't really fans or don't really know what's going on would have like quite a big payoff at some point and be like, oh wow,
Yeah, and it's interesting. I would love to see them explore that. I would be a little bit concerned that
too much in one movie.
Yeah, too much in one movie, and the mass market audience isn't familiar with Dawn Moreno. I mean, she may be really, the G.I. Joe fandom is very familiar with her, but, and I don't know. I mean, that could be a really great way to introduce her to kind of the mass audience and kind of get her in front of people. And I think that'd be, if executed well, that would be a really neat twist and a really great piece of the story. And just, like you said, it would cram a lot of stuff into a single, movie that probably already has a lot of stuff kind of going on in it. But I could still, and again, it all depends on execution and the right filmmakers, which I'm not convinced they've got. But that's
another thing, isn't it?
Cool.
It's the thought of like, do they have what it takes to actually to pull that story out? And
if Marvel Studios or the people associated with Marvel Studios were going to pull a twist like that, I would say that could be really cool. But if the people doing the Transformers movies are going to pull a twist like that, it's going to feel gimmicky and cheesy, and it's not going to work. So
chimmicky.
Chimmicky, there you go.
Another thing, I have to give credit to Kate again here, but she did say that you could explore a lot of the backstory for Snake Eyes in the actual upcoming G.I. Joe movie.
True.
So you could get a lot of that, almost like the we'll call it foundation for now. But you lay the foundations. Let's use metaphors. You you lay the foundations in that G.I. Joe movie, and then the spin-off of the Snake Eyes movie is then allowed to be a little bit freer, right?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it depends what order they're going to do these things in, and if they are going to do G.I. Joe 3 first, then that makes a whole lot of sense where they do that, they lay that foundation there for whatever this new twist on Snake Eyes might be, and then from there they spin off the Snake Eyes. But we get back to your earlier point, whereas isn't it a little bit early to be talking about all this stuff?
Yeah.
We don't even know if the third G.I. Joe movie is going to be remotely successful, and they're already talking about spinning it off. I mean, it's
related to that. This is another question for you, but G.I. Joe G.I. Joe 3, as it's been touted recently, and also we also got that script information as well that we talked about not long ago.
Right.
Now, if it's going to be a continuation, surely a lot of it just has to be the standard issue Snake Eyes story. But if it's a reboot, which we're still, I mean, I don't think that has been clearly. I don't think we know what it's going to be yet. There hasn't been enough information, really. We've just kind of going on scraps. But
regardless of what that script says or what that blog says, we don't know for sure that this is not a reboot. It could still very well be.
And that obviously, do you think that will have an effect on what this Snake Eyes spin-off would be, right?
Oh yeah, sure, definitely. I mean, and it also depends on kind of how heavy they're going with the reboot. Like if they're going whole hog, creating something. Because remember, at one point,
full hog.
At one point, not too long ago, there were rumors that G.I. Joe 3 was going to be a World War II story or something like that. I mean, so who knows if that's still something that they're kind of tossing around in the back of their head. I mean,
we've had some terrible ideas though. We had the Mask as Power Rangers story.
Yes.
Was it the youth empowerment angle, which is probably how they're going to go with it, but I'll wait and see how that pans out. And we've also this script that came out that had people like Keel Hall and Wild Bill and a bunch of like random fringe characters because they wanted it to be a continuation of Retaliation and everyone had been destroyed. Right. And then there's, like you say, and then with this idea of the World War II one, which again I wouldn't have a problem if it was a flashback. If that was like the that was included in there to get the G.I. Joe element out of it, the original G.I. Joe. I think that could be quite a cool thing to do. But as a basis, and that's where all the characters operate in. I mean, wow, that would be different, wouldn't it?
You'd once again get to the scenario where they're building up to something, and then you never get the payoff because the movie's not successful enough to follow up correctly. It's that Marvel formula where they're trying to do similar things that Marvel Studios did without understanding that Marvel, when they started, they made sure they made strong individual movies that did not have to connect to each other. And then once they realized that this was actually a money-making venture that was working out for them, then they started getting a little bit more interwoven, whereas this is kind of, we're going to make these all interwoven right up front without knowing if they're going to be successful, and then you end up getting half a story, Because, I mean, if they had done that Captain America, first Avenger movie back in World War II, and then, it wasn't successful and they never did any follow-ups, people would say, well, that was kind of crappy. That felt pretty incomplete. There was really nothing. We didn't see what Cap's potential was in the modern day, which is what everybody wanted to see. And I would say the same thing for G.I. Joe. If they waste this combined universe on a G.I. Joe World War II movie and then it flops, then where do we go from there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's one of the ones that's kind of almost been brushed under the rug recently.
Yeah.
So let's hope that continues. Keep that rug down, guys. Now, my last question is just one that, so if it goes in the kind of standard issue direction, would you like to see Ray Park kind of continue in his role as Snake Eyes, or would you like to see someone else get like a shot at that? And are there any people that spring to mind?
Well, that's a tough call because Ray Park is given everything to the Snake Eyes role and really,
he's been the shining star, really.
He has, and he hasn't, we hear all these guys like Chris Eccleston and Channing Tatum say how miserable shooting the film was and whining about it and everything. But Ray Park is just, he just goes right in and does it and has a blast with it. That being said, I don't think you can develop a Snake Eyes individual character franchise around Ray Park. You'd have to find some other kind of mainstream actor, I think, to carry that role if you're going to make a Snake Eyes movie. He's no longer just a guy in a mask running around in the background. He is now the man.
Yeah, and the origin would suggest that he'd have to be unmasked. He'd have to be
exactly. Yeah. And obviously nothing against Ray Park at all. I mean, but just
I know what you mean.
I think from a Hollywood perspective, I don't think they'd be willing to take that chance. They would want to go a little bit, a little bit higher level. And at this point, as far as actors go, I kind of struggle to find, who would be the perfect Snake Eyes actor, because really anybody, you don't want to say anybody could do it, but I mean, he's a guy who doesn't talk. You never really see his face. And even when Hama explored his backstory, he still kind of maintained he still never talked a whole lot. And he still had that hat pulled down over his eyes, and you still never really got a vibe for what he was besides some crazy martial arts soldier. So what is his personality? I mean, he's motivated, he's driven, he's very focused, he's loyal. I mean, any of that stuff, you could incorporate anybody into that role. Anybody from Matt Damon or and I only say Matt Damon because you think of the Jason Bourne franchise. That's the kind of feel that I suspect Snake Eyes would get these days, where it's not so much an acrobatic ninja type, but more of a functional martial arts
commando
kind of style.
Totally.
Commando type of guy, like a Jason Bourne or something along those lines.
Plus, he has got the experience of doing the whole mysterious backstory as well, hasn't he? Yeah. That's a good call. I would probably expect them to go younger. And I think they'd probably go for. There's a guy that's coming up in the Predator movie. I forget what his name is, but he's gone. I think he's one of the main major characters in that, and I could see him probably, doing something along those lines where he's like the classic blonde-haired Snake Eyes as you would see him before all the disfigurement and everything. But again, there's another film that's just dropped, and the trailer that's just dropped, I should say, that I'm kind of a little bit. This is a side note, but I'm a little bit meh about the moment, because it's looking a little bit. It's very much Alien versus Predator Requiem and that kind of suburban. I'm just not a fan of that. I want to see people out of their depth in the jungle getting hunted. That's what I want to see.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think I know who you're talking about for the actor. Are you talking about Boyd Holbrook? Is that the one?
That's his name. Thank you, Justin. Boyd Holbrook. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in Narcos on Netflix, and he was awesome in that.
He was, wasn't he? I completely forgot he was in that. Yeah. I knew I recognised him. Yes. So I mean that's somebody that I think
he would work. Yeah, he would be great.
Now, but something I should say, that the fact that you've said that obviously it needs someone unmasked, it needs that element. The male Snake Eyes is predominantly covered. Like you said, lots of mystery, lots of kind of coverage, lots of the mask is always on. Dawn, however, does not have that handicap.
True.
She is unmasked. She can take that off whenever she wants, and she's only half covered when she's got the mask on. So I think that would be another thing that Hollywood would probably be chomping at the bit at. They'd probably be going, yes, this is a way around the fact that we don't have to actually cover the face the whole time.
Yeah. Or they could find a way to do, kill two birds with one stone. And, I hate to, relegate Dawn to sidekick status, but maybe they work together.
Yeah,
or a protege. Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. Yeah.
Duo. Let's say duo to remain level and balanced. But that would be really cool. Whatever the outcome, this is cool, exciting news. We're getting some more stuff about the movies coming through, which I know I bag on the movies all the time, and I bag on the Transformers movies all the time. So I'm hoping I'm not going to be bagging on ROM, Micronauts, G.I. Joe, Visionaries, Mask, etc. I hope I'm not. I hope it's going to be amazing.
Nope.
But
we all want these. A lot of people are kind of pessimistic or kind of talk down about it. I do too. I do too. But nobody wants these films to be unsuccessful. I think we all want to see some really fun, awesome, exciting Hasbro-oriented movies. That's what we all want. I think whether or not we're confident that's going to happen is another matter. But I think that we're all on the same page there. We would love to be able to go into a movie theater and see an awesome Hasbro Cinematic Universe kind of adventure. We know the potential is there. It's just it's a little frustrating to think that maybe they haven't quite got all the pieces together yet, but we all want the same thing, and I think we all hope that that's what we're going to get in the next few years.
And one final thing, who would you think, or actress? What actress out there do you think would make for a good Dawn Moreno?
Ooh.
One that flew through my mind was not necessarily because of one because there's a practical aspect of it, in that she was in the last Transformers movie, the young girl that played the kind of like the human, the standard issue human in the Transformers movie. I thought she could probably hold her own and probably do some of the event, because Dawn's quite a young character, isn't she? So I think by the time they got to filming that, she'd probably, she'd be a little bit older. She could probably do something along those lines.
Yeah, I could go for that. I mean, that's a good call. I always get stuck. I'm an old man now. I'm in my 40s, and I'm not so up on the current actors and actresses. So casting calls I can kind of stumble upon, but yeah, I think that's a good enough choice. I think that works.
Okay, well, there are plenty more out there, but I think with Dawn it has to be maybe like an up and coming actor that we haven't seen before. That would be really, really cool. Anyway, that's it for this instalment of the Full Force Newsburst. Thank you to my wonderful co-host Justin Bell. See you next time, and as always, Full Force.
See you later.
Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of these platforms with feedback, questions or to say, who do you think you are? A serious operation now? No, not even close. Look out for more of these news bursts that we are posting on the Facebook page from now on. Full Force.